less, be more. Leader Fan Radio Network,
Believe.
and KFAN.com. 2 minutes, 12 seconds past 3 Central Standard Time. We welcome you back to a very special Thursday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program on a rather overcast but balmy, relatively speaking, Thursday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. My name is Dan Barreiro. I host the program every once in a while. Former ink-stained wretch, newspaper of the Twin Cities. Guardsy is, I believe, in Iowa City. That means Brett Blakemore is in that chair. And joining us very early in today's show, because he's got a very, very busy schedule. When you cover a team as vital as the Chicago Bulls, you don't have a lot of extra time for, meaningless talk show hosts in the upper Midwest. But Joe Cowley is going to give us a couple minutes. Chicago Sun-Times, ink-stained wretch, via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. How are you, sir? Hello. Maybe I annoyed Joe with that introduction. Maybe he was tired of waiting that long. We'll try to get him back in a minute. We got a star-studded guest lineup today that will also include John Athletic at the bottom of this hour. And our in-studio guest at 4:30 is Andy Luger. So we will go A section after going toy department through at least the first hour of the program. And then at 4 o'clock, Nico Medved, the men's basketball coach at the University of Minnesota, fresh off a victory that looked dangerously close to being lost against the Michigan State Spartans last night. He is going to join us. Nico's going to join us at 4:02. So I'm very pleased, as I said, with the guest lineup today. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line will be rebooted here very, very shortly. 64686. And the question on the table is, do you believe in the concept of less is more? Because obviously less means the Minnesota Timberwolves did not get the big fish. They did not land the Greek Freak. They did not land Giannis. Had your hopes been built up so much that anything short of that was going to disappoint you? Or were you in the group that said, I'm not sure I want to give up as much as it appears the Wolves are going to have to give up in order to acquire him? So that's where we talk about the less part. And could less be more? The Wolves did get help for the bench. They did get a wing who can shoot and who can defend. Ayo Dosunmu is his name, and Joe Cowley has been covering him for quite some time. I think we got him back via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. There we go. I thought maybe you hung up because that was such a long, rambling dissertation. Wow.
I don't know what's happening here.
Well, maybe when you call, the next time if you get them, you pot them up. Maybe there's, again, something going on with this phone line, although it worked fine yesterday. So I don't know what the deal is. Maybe we tend to have a lot of phone problems in the afternoon here on the Bumper to Bumper program.
I talked to him 5 seconds ago.
Seriously?
On
Yeah.
that phone.
Well, is there another number he can call? Can you call him? Oh, you have been calling him. I guess that's true. Can he call a hotline? Maybe that would be a better way to go. I don't know. But I do know I was told his time was very short. And I would like to get a scouting report on the move on the player that the Wolves did get. I said as recently as yesterday, it was essential, regardless of Giannis, that you add somebody to score off the bench. Essential if this team wanted to even think it could get back to the Final Four, as it did the last 2 years. And I think he represents that. Might there have been better options? Well, we'll talk to, we hope, eventually, Joe about that, if we ever get this phone situation worked out. And then, as I mentioned, it looks more and more with every minute that Mike Conley, who we said goodbye to just 2 days ago, is coming back. Not making quite as much money, got bought out. At least the Wolves don't have to pay him as much money. But it looks like Mike is indeed likely headed back to Minnesota, and hopefully that means he can get back on the show as a semi-regular through the 2025-26 season. He actually has been a semi-regular in this show for several years as well. It looks like Blakemore is negotiating with our guest to see if this will work out. Do we know what's happening exactly? Yeah, I know you're trying to have two conversations. I think the arena might just
be dead, and they're have no reception.
Oh, is that right?
I've been talking to him.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So he's in an arena right now. Is that the deal?
Yep.
United Center, perhaps? Interesting. Well, do you think we're going to be able to pull this off? Or should I just sort of ramble a little bit more and take an early break? What do you think?
And it just dropped on me a third time.
And it did drop, yeah. So he must be, well, I guess maybe I'll try, or you can try texting him if you have the number and just say, is there any chance he could get to a higher plane or someplace where, because I really would, we love Joe. We've had Joe on this program for a long, long time. And the one thing about Joe is he's direct. So he's going to tell us what he has observed in reporting on and covering Ayo Dosunmu for quite some time. I will mention, let me see if I can find it here, an interesting observation from one of the other writers. I think his name is Casey Johnson out of Chicago. Here's what he tweeted out earlier today. A word about Ayo Dosunmu. You can tell he's a Chicago kid. Wouldn't be denied. Relentless, hardworking, no-nonsense pro who loved hard coaching and always looked inward. Everything he gets in his career he will have earned was a go-to voice in the locker room for what we do as well. And by now, maybe if you are enough of a fan, you probably have the numbers on him, which this year are the best of his career. 45 games, averaging 26 and a half minutes a game, shooting a robust, especially for a wing, 51.4% from the floor, 45.1% from three, taking about 4.5 threes a game, making 1.9, basically 2. Free throw line, not a lot. Good free throw shooter, gets to the line on the average this year 2.5 times. Rebounds, 3 a game. Assists, 3.6 a game. Averaging 15 points a game. And that was actually a better scoring average than I thought. I had not been paying all that much close attention to the Bulls for reasons that should be obvious. They just seem like one of those teams that exists, but is not awful. Have had a couple of stretches where they look pretty good, and then they go back to what they've tended to be, which is irrelevant. And good players, or I should maybe put it this way, useful players can get buried in that environment because he's not a transcendent talent. In other words, he's not going to be the guy who leads you to the promised land. We should have no illusions about that. But I do think he can tend to be more important than he might have looked as part of a better ensemble. And we've laid out all the numbers for you for quite some time. There's no bench right now beyond, consistently speaking, beyond Naz Reid. And the idea was, if the Bucks, and by the way, what my sources are saying is that the Bucks in the end just didn't ever get very serious about moving him. And I don't know if that means they have second thoughts or they've decided we're going to have more options in the offseason. We'd rather do that. We'd rather continue to shut him down. And then we'll recommence this whole thing in the offseason where more teams might be involved. Frankly, the Wolves will have more to offer eventually. That is, if he's not traded before the draft. Regardless, I don't think it ever got close. Not because the Wolves were not serious about pursuing him, because I have been told they were, but that the Bucks never really responded in a significant enough way to think that the Wolves were close on anything. So we can have and have had the debate. Had it with Sam Mitchell yesterday about, well, how much is too much to give up for him? The old robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that's a fair discussion. But I said all along that you can't have this trade deadline end without a move. If it all was to save money, it's going to be a very bad look for the new ownership group. You have to come out of this giving yourself a chance with at least a player who represents or who answers what Nickeil Alexander-Walker represents. Maybe not as good in some ways, but a guy who can give you, can help ease the pain of losing him, because we've said this all season. The one thing the Wolves weren't able to do and have not been able to do is replace him. They had their reasons to decide, to determine that they couldn't bring everybody back. He was the odd man out. We get that. But what he represented was too important, especially given the fact that another member of the bench, Dante DiVincenzo from a year ago, gets moved into the starting lineup. So you got nothing going on the bench, or very little on a consistent basis beyond Nas. And Dosunmu has been a very effective scorer. Now, I'm told if you think he's a point guard in waiting, he's not. That he's more a slasher, scorer, go downhill guy who can get to the basket and who can shoot, and is having statistically easily his best season. He's 26 years old, by the way, drafted in the 2021 draft, round 2 by the Bulls. He was the 38th pick in that draft, and I look at his numbers. Well, I guess technically he shot better, 52% his rookie season. But since then, this has been, he's tended to be 49 to 50 to 51% all along. But his three-point shooting, this is the best easily of his career. He came in early. His first 2 years, he was shooting 37% and 31. So he has improved, and by all accounts, he is, my guess is he's going to be a very popular player at Target Center, because Target Center is one of those places, I think, that does appreciate labor. They appreciate hard work. We got him? Oh, good. So should you want to pot him up, or should I?
I'll do it.
Why don't you do it, just in case it has something to do with the phone in my, there we go. Joe, I'm sorry for this misadventure, or series of misadventures. You got us?
Yeah, I'm just glad to after a little snafu a couple years ago, but everything's good.
Yeah, everything's good. All right, Joe Cowley joining us, a longtime NBA writer, Bulls writer, Inkstain Wretch, one of the few left in Chicago, Illinois, Chicago Sun-Times. So I mentioned that I had reintroduced you earlier, saying the beauty of having you on is you don't feel obligated to do the bit, all right, I'm in the hometown of the new team that the guy I covered went to. I have to say good things about him, whether I believe them or not. You will be direct. That's your calling card. So give us the Joe Cowley, the direct, top of the line, letting it all out, scouting report on who the Timberwolves have acquired.
Just a great dude. I mean, I can't criticize him. I can't take a shot at him. He's the essence of Chicago basketball. Hard player, hard worker, great talker, good leader. He's done everything you could ask of a second-round pick and more. So they're getting a good one. They're getting a really good one. Good person, really good player, underrated, bust his ass. I mean, it's a great trade from Minnesota.
I would assume then, I was saying, Target Center, like a lot of places, the hardcore fans like that. They like work ethic. They like guys who become very easy to root for in that regard. And it certainly sounds like he should be, for that reason, popular. But let's be honest. The Wolves need more than blue collar right now. The Wolves need another scorer, somebody who can make a basket every once in a while off the bench, because their bench is practically naked at this point. Give me a sense of how he has evolved as an offensive player.
Well, first of all, I mean, Minnesota's, I think number 10 in pace, and Bulls are 4, so I think he fits into their model. I mean, he's a really good finisher. Look, is he the flat-out scorer that Kobe White is? No. But he's also a much better defender than Kobe White.
Right.
So I think that's there's an attraction. He's more of a two-way player than Kobe White. He's not the, like I said, he's not the flat-out scorer, but he's improved in everything. So the interesting thing is, does he show enough where they're kind of interested in keeping this relationship going, since he is a free agent after this year? But no, I think they're getting a guy that can help, because he can run the point. He can play off the ball. He's kind of a combo guard, so if Ant wants the ball in his hand and wants to go ISO in the fourth quarter, he can do that. Mm-hmm. If Ant wants to be off the ball, Io's skilled enough to run the point. So, like I said, I just think they made out in this trade. Of all the 8 trades that the Bulls made, this is the most lopsided one, and Minnesota pulled it off.
Why do you think the Bulls did it? Do you think they just had no intention of re-signing him?
Yeah, I just think they're bringing in all these guards for auditions. I don't know what the hell the Bulls are doing. What we were told last week is they wanted to become a bigger team. Well, guess what? Now they're built like the Lollipop Guild. They got smaller. We were told that second-round picks are garbage, even though Arturas Karnisovas made his name off a second-round pick named Nikola Jokic. And now they've got the second-round picks for the next 20 years. Yeah. Everybody's second-round pick. So I don't know what exactly they're doing. I will say this thing isn't done because they have so much cap space.
Right.
We'll go into the summer and play bully ball with teams and try and outbid them for their restricted free agents, because there's only 9 teams that are going to have money this summer, and the Bulls are one of them. So that's definitely the plan. Is they're going to say, okay, you can't afford Jalen Duren, Detroit. We're going to try bidding him up as a restricted free agent. So that's the plan. I mean, Arturas is basically a raccoon that's going through everyone's garbage.
I'm sure he appreciates that comparison. So you do believe, not maybe full-time, but that, part-time, Dosunmu can run it enough, even though he's considered more of a combo guard? You think he does have that in him?
Yes, I do. I think he's shown it when they need him to play the point, when they need him. Whatever they need him to do, he's one of those guys that will attempt to do it. And like I said, is he as skilled a scorer as Kobe as a combo guard? No. Those talks, last time I was on the show, those talks were alive and well back in early December. They just couldn't come to an agreement. But they definitely wanted one of those Bulls combo guards, whether it was Ayo or Kobe or even Trey Jones was mentioned. So, I think Timberwolves fans and the organization are going to be really excited about what they're giving this kid, just because of the makeup. He's a do whatever it takes foxhole type guy.
As you know, they were definitely in the hunt. They were aggressively pursuing Giannis. Eventually, what I've been told is they never felt the Bucks. It never got serious because they don't really think the Bucks ever got serious, at least so far. What's your general view of that in itself? I mean, because it was very clear that the Wolves are going to have to give up. They were going to have to cut into their core clearly to get that done, and they were going to go, I guess, more with the the old-fashioned big two. If the 2 best players are top 10, you just figure out the rest of it later. How much was too much? I mean, did you think the pursuit was noble? Do you think they're better off, being a little bit more conservative here? What do you think of the whole Greek freak conversation coming here?
I mean, I think the pursuit was noble, but I think it was just kind of a big fugazi until this summer.
Mm-hmm.
I think Milwaukee was just kind of testing the waters just to see what it would look like right now if there was something that would knock their socks off. Because we were just up in Milwaukee, and from all the writers and people I talked to up there, the only way this thing was going to go to DEFCON 1 was if Giannis came out publicly and said, trade me, because then all bets were off, and the Bucks were going to do him no favors, and they were going to send him to Sacramento there. That's what I was told. So I think it were point. So I just don't think they're serious right now. I think this was more about a feeling out process for the summer and for the off season, where they see where they're at, see where Giannis is at, and then give teams more of a chance to up the ante now that you'll have more time to do so.
Last item for Joe Cowley, Chicago Sun-Times. A lot of people tend to rank teams in a plateau where they say, this is a team in the top plateau that has a chance to win it, maybe with one rung below on the ladder. What plateau do you put the Wolves on, knowing now that there's nothing else realistic, big or even modest that they're going to be able to do, and they did make this one move? Where do you put the Wolves?
I put them in that second tier in the West, and I think that first tier is San Antonio and OKC. So I put them right there, kind of nudging that thing. So look right where they want to be. You're one Wemby injury or Shea injury away in the playoffs from sitting there in the finals and waiting to see who comes out of the East. So we were up there a couple of weeks ago, and the Bulls obviously beat the Timberwolves. That's right. I think it was one of those schedule losses, but no, that's a good team. That's a great coach. I think this is a nice little piece to grab to kind of put them right there at the top of that second tier.
Joe, thanks, man. I appreciate the time. I know you're tight. Your schedule is tight, so thanks for helping us out as always, man.
Anytime for you, Dan.
Appreciate you. Have a good afternoon.
All right, buddy. Take care. Bye.
Joe Cowley is the beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times covering the Chicago Bulls. Interesting comments from him. As I said, he's very direct. He's not a guy who worries about hurting home fans' feelings. We're late. Let's go ahead and take a quick pause now. Bonus bucks, you got those going?
I do. The fan wants to give you a shot to win those bonus bucks in the National Cash Contest. And the keyword is bonus for this hour. The keyword bonus, KFAN.com. Keyword bonus. We all had one teacher who believed in us. Well, you can show your gratitude with Thank a Teacher. It's powered by Donors Choose. Nominate a public school teacher to win $5,000 for their classroom. This week's winner, Elizabeth Schultz, a special ed teacher at Valley View Elementary School. Nominate your teacher to thank today, iHeartRadio.com/teachers. iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
There is one aspect of this Wolves deal that should not be ignored, can't be ignored, and obviously will not be ignored. The Rob Dillingham big move that I celebrated, like a lot of basketball people I trusted and endorsed, ends up being a failure. Now, I'm not ruling out the possibility that he could end up being a good player. But the Wolves obviously couldn't wait, or they decided they could not allow him or would not allow him. At least Finchie made this clear, that he would not allow him to play through mistakes. He's got to go to a place where there's less at stake and a team is building and he can do that. So I'm not here to say he can never be any good, but I fully felt that by year 2, there was a good chance that he could emerge already. And obviously they needed him to, with Mike Conley getting longer in the tooth. And I think deep down a belief that they'd rather not have Anthony Edwards have to handle the ball as much as they are now asking him to handle it. So it's proof that even the good ones, and Tim Conley is one of those, isn't going to hit all the time. Because I can still remember me wondering, because the Spurs drafted him and then they made a trade. That's how we got him. We gave up a 1 to an unprotected one, as I recall, to do it. And I was all for it. Because I thought, well, this is the one piece you need, and I've heard too many good things about him. It just didn't work out here. Didn't even come close to working out here. And ultimately, will we find out Finchie should have been more patient? I don't know. But it's hard to be patient when you're good. And frankly, that sort of underscores for me the difference between the Timberwolves and the Vikings, in that the Vikings put themselves in a position where they had no choice but to sink or swim on the basis of what J.J. McCarthy was ready to do. The Wolves did at least have the luxury to say, we don't have to play him. We want to play him, but we don't have to play him, and we're not going to play him if he's going to take away our best chance to move forward. And that's a really, really big difference. That's the way I think the best teams do it, where they may believe in a player, but they don't throw a player into the deep end and let him, struggle, the way that the Vikings put themselves in a position where they had no choice. Wolves had a choice, and the choice has been, we're going to move Anthony Edwards to point and have him do more, and they still have a very good record. So that's, I think, has to be part of the discussion as we move forward. Let's get caught up. We were a little behind because of the phone issues we were having with Joe Cowley. Let's get the Johnny Athletic perspective on sort of where the Wolves stand right now. Trade deadline done. What happened? What might have happened? And really, what this team might be looking like going forward this year, and maybe even beyond this year. We'll do that. As I said, we'll talk college basketball with Nico Medved. Going to go for a men's basketball coach at 4. Andy Luger on A-section material at 4:30. Stay tuned.
It's time for Johnny Athletic. Johnny Athletic. Johnny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barreiro right now.
Bonus Johnny Athletic for the obvious reasons. The Wolves do get in under the... Well, it wasn't like they went right to the deadline on the deal that they indeed made, but they made one. It's not a whopper of a trade, but it's a maybe a subtly effective one. And Johnny Athletic is joining us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline as usual. Have you taken the temperature of Wolves fans? Because my assumption originally was people were going to lose their minds because their hopes got built up. However, I got to add this. In the last 2 or 3 days, I believe I got more texts from people saying, don't do it, than do it once we got an idea of what the price might be. So how do you think Wolves fans are going to process that, at least for now, Giannis does not land in Minnesota?
Yeah, Dan, I think you're right. about how they have absorbed what's happened over the last few days. Here was what, I had people within the organization even asking me, kind of as this was playing out, how do you think this will go? And my always impression was that initially there would be angst because there would be a big price to pay and you'd be saying goodbye to some players that you really love. But then Giannis would come in and give you 34, 13, and 9 the first game, and you'd be like, okay, I'm good with this. But I did sense some nervousness in the Wolves fandom last night as, kind of all of these rumors were swirling this week. And just like, man, I don't really want to say goodbye to Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert or Julius Randle and Dillingham and this and that to get a guy who's 31 years old and who has had some injuries. And when has that worked before? And so I do think that when it became clear that Giannis was not in the fold for them right now, that generally speaking, there was a sigh of relief. I think there's plenty of people that were excited about Giannis and really did want it to happen. But there was a larger than I expected amount of Wolves fans who are like, I don't want to lose Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid specifically. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're happy with how it turned out today.
Yeah, I think you stated well. I believe if they hadn't done anything to improve the roster immediately, even with what you could call a medium-sized move like the one they made, then I think it could have gotten ugly early for A-Rod and Laurie because it would have been at least perceived as what they do. All they did was improve their luxury tax situation and really didn't do anything to help Ant, at least by adding one more piece to the bench, right? Then I think it might have been much uglier.
100%, Dan. And I'll tell you, during the week as it unfolded, as the Conley deal went down, it was clear right away that was a salary motivated thing. And I don't begrudge them that. I mean, they saved $20 million and, they gave up a player who has been playing a lot here, but hasn't been playing well. And, lo and behold, it looks like they're going to get him back. So that really worked out slick. But, as we kind of waited for the next shoe to drop, there were people around the league just saying, hey, I don't know that these owners are going to spend the money needed to go out there and supplement this roster. And then they went and got Ayo Dosunmu. That was a big, big move because this is a team, Dan, I do believe, when you look at the landscape of the Western Conference, when you look at some of their really good wins that they've had this year, when you look at their success in the last 2 years in the playoffs, they deserved to have investment and to have the team improved at the deadline and get a real shot. And they found a guy in Ayo Dosunmu that I believe really fits exactly what they needed. And so even though it's not Giannis, it's also not nothing. It's a significant upgrade from what they had. And that's a very good first step for Mark Laurie and Alex Rodriguez's first trade deadline. I think Tim Connelly did a great job with this. And you're right. If they would have come out of this just dumping salary on a team that has been looked to be competitive, even if it's been up and down a little bit, it would not have been a good look at all. What
would you say to Wolves fans who say, okay, yeah, I can see it. He's had a good year. He's improved every year. He's considered, basically a hard-ass Chicago kid, man. It's tough guy town, as Mike Tice said a long time ago, and that's how he plays, which I think should make him a player very easy for the hardcore Wolves fans who show up, especially to root for. But what do you say to those who say, yeah, I get it, but this feels like a little bit of a consolation prize instead of Kobe White? You say what to them?
I will say this, and I said this before the trade and all the way leading up to it. I think that Ayo Dosunmu is a better player for the Minnesota Timberwolves than Kobe White would have been. I think Kobe White is a really good scorer. He has the ability to go out and get you 25 or 30 points on a given night. But Dan, I don't think they need that kind of a player. Certainly they need more scoring on their bench. They do. They need a guy who can get some buckets. But what they need is energy, intensity, like some kind of backbone. I think one of the frustrating things about watching this team this season has been the amount of times where they just have come out flat and soft. And Ayo Dosunmu, as we heard Joe Cowley, who, I mean, how often does he sing praises like he just did on your airwaves? Not often. He's a tough, nut to crack. And so, but this guy, you're going to see him come out and play with intensity on a nightly basis.
And he guards.
And bring toughness and guards. Yes. He's another Dante DiVincenzo who has been so important for this team because you need attitude. Like, you need someone who's going to fight a little bit. And I think that he's one of those guys that is going to bring that on a night in and night out basis on both ends of the floor. And that's why I think I would rather have Ayo Dosunmu than Kobe White.
A lot of what I believe from people I trust is he is a guy who can play both on and off the ball, not a natural point guard by any means, not a guy you want to turn over the offense to forever. Now, Cowley thinks for stretches, though, he can do that. He can initiate and run the offense. But again, I don't know. I mean, you look at, because I mean, there's a part of me that says, well, would we be better off with as the backup, a purer point guard, given that the assumption is, even though Mike Conley apparently is coming back, I'm assuming his minutes are going to go down even more at this point. What's more important? Was it to get somebody who could run the show or somebody who literally could give him another scorer off the bench, given that, beyond Naz Reid, it's been very up and down for several other players?
Yeah, Dan, I'm of the mind that I really think they needed more scoring punch, more pop off the bench, because not for two reasons. One is when you have seen when this team gets someone other than just Naz scoring, like Bones Highland, when he has a good scoring night like he did last night in Toronto, I was there for that game, they're really successful. They beat a really good Toronto team on the road for the first time in 22 years in Toronto. They won in large part because they got a good scoring night from Bones Highland to balance Anthony Edwards and everything else. If you want to say, yeah, I want my pure point guard, I want to go look for it, and we need one of those, I would say, who are you going to get? It's just not out there. Like, is it Trey Jones? Maybe. Is it Tyus Jones? Maybe, but hasn't been effective lately. Those guys are gone, Dan. And so I think that when push comes to shove, as we saw in Toronto last night, the point guard of this team is Anthony Edwards. And so even if you went out and got a classic point guard, he does not have the ball in his hands in important moments. Dosunmu is going to be able to do some of that in the middle of the games, and then he can come in and gives you some versatility if you need it. But I just think that what this team needed was impact. This team needed, someone that was going to come in and play, and Dosunmu is that guy. And if they would have targeted a classic point guard, I don't know who they could have gotten who would have been anywhere close to the caliber of player that Ayo Dosunmu is.
Now, I'll throw out one name to you. I don't think he fits offensively because they absolutely needed some more scoring than I think this player represents. But Alvarado ends up going, I think, from the Pelicans to the Knicks. But the Knicks are looking for – he represents – I love his activity, and I love the way he can play. Would he have fit as well, do you think, if he was gettable? How would you compare him to the guy they got?
Yeah, I think he was another guy that was sort of on their radar, I will say. But when you look at the difference, Dan, Alvarado, I just brought his stats up. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds.
And shooting 40%.
6'4", and 200. He's a big dude.
Yes.
And he has a 6'10" wingspan. And we saw what happens in this day and age to smaller guards. Now, Alvarado's he's had a good career, but you look at his numbers, too. He's 42% from the field, 36% from three.
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, Dosunmu is 50% from the field, 45% from three. I mean, he averages twice as many points per game as Alvarado. He's just he's a much, much better player overall. Alvarado is a really nice spark plug for sure, but there is a little bit more gimmick to his game, whereas Dosunmu is a big, strong, nasty dude that is going to fit in with the physicality that this team wants to play with and kind of the intensity and the attitude. And so I just think that there's no comparison between the two, to be honest with you.
Is this, we know he's on an expiring contract, is Dosunmu. So is this basically an audition, or do you think, especially given, as I understand it, the advantages the Wolves would have in re-signing him, that it's fairly certain that this move is made with the intention of bringing him back on a new deal as well?
Yeah, I've talked to people about that already, and there absolutely is a desire to have a longer-term commitment than just the next couple of months here with Ayo Dosunmu. One of the great things about making the deal right now is they have his bird rights going forward, which means they can go over the salary cap to sign him to a new deal. And that gives them a little bit more flexibility in how they kind of can structure things. And so it depends, of course, on price tag and what else happens during this season and how he plays here. Of course, they want to evaluate that, but they are bringing him in with the full expectation that, provided everything goes well, that they want to keep him around for a long time. And he's 26 years old. He fits into the timeline of Edwards, McDaniels, Nas, like everyone else here. And so the Timberwolves made this trade not only for the present, but also for the future, if possible.
You, I think, have reported this pretty consistently, and it's certainly what I've been told by people I trust, that it never really got close with the Bucks, not because the Wolves were not inclined or interested, but because the Bucks never seemed to be all that ready or all that serious about getting this thing done. Is that how you view it?
Yeah, that's exactly how I view it, Dan. It was really interesting over the last week. There was so much excitement, so many rumors swirling, so much discussion about the Timberwolves being incredibly aggressive, maybe even being the front runners here or there to land Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the whole time, the people that I'm trusting within the organization that I'm talking to were certainly of the mind that, yes, we are trying to position ourselves to be ready if the Bucks give us the green light to try and find a deal. I think Tim Connolly was really poring over the market and looking at all sorts of different scenarios to move players here and players there and get picks back and do things to make some sort of palatable package for the Milwaukee Bucks to accept. But they never really had any discussions with Milwaukee that elevated beyond to real deal making types of conversations. And so there was always a skepticism internally about, are these guys for real, or are they just kind of dipping their toe in the water to gauge the market? And so they were absolutely ready to try to execute something, but it never got even close to getting that far down the road. Milwaukee just, you never really engaged them that way.
By the way, I don't know if you and I talked about this. Do you think the Wolves ever were tempted to explore the Ja Morant situation on the basis of you might be able to steal him? That, yeah, it's dangerous, but you probably aren't going to have to give up what once upon a time would have been demanded. Was that ever part of the Wolves conversation as far as you know? For my impression with Ja Morant and the Timberwolves always was they just had some concerns about the fit with Ant and about what they had seen from Ja physically over the last couple of years, and some kind of concerns maybe that he's declining, with all of the injuries that he's gone through. And so even in the last couple of days, as maybe there was starting to be some indications that Memphis was coming off a relatively high asking price for Ja Morant, I don't think that the Wolves ever really seriously kind of refocused on Morant. I think that they were really all in on Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then looking at their plan B was always someone like Dosunmu, someone like Quentin Grimes in Philadelphia. Right.
You know, something like that, rather than pivoting away to a James Harden, to a Ja Morant, to a LaMelo Ball type of a situation. I don't think that ever really became a real scenario for them.
What's the lesson on Dillingham?
I'm going to be very, very interested to see if he is able to get on track in Chicago, because it is true that the circumstances changed dramatically for him after he was drafted here. They made the Karl Anthony Challenge trade. They brought in DiVincenzo. There's all of a sudden not a lot of minutes, and he came to a team that was ready to contend right away, and he needed to be on the Washington Wizards. He needed to be on the Chicago Bulls, where he could just go out there, make a bunch of mistakes, play through it, and see if he could find his way. He lost confidence here, and I just don't think that Chris Finch ever really gave him that belief, because rightfully so, in fairness to Finch, he was really struggled from a shot-making standpoint and from a turnover standpoint. And so he never really got continuous run, though, here. Right. And the Wolves just felt like they couldn't afford to do that and to give him a real opportunity. So I don't think it's an indictment necessarily on Rob Dillingham. I think that he needs to be somewhere and just play a lot, and then we'll make a decision, because there's a scenario where he goes and plays for a couple of years somewhere and becomes a rotation piece and becomes a confident scorer. But just, it was never going to happen here with all of the pressures to win, with Finch's kind of predilection toward veterans. Yes. It just was a bad mix.
Yeah. Well, again, some of this is a compliment, because this is the first time in the history of the organization where you had something to lose, right? I mean, how many times you say, just throw him out there. What the hell's the difference? You just throw him out there and he can learn. And so we can argue about whether they should have done a better job of giving him more of a chance or have been more patient. But that's the reality, is that when you have a good team, it's harder to throw somebody out there, which, as I mentioned earlier, kind of exactly what the Vikings did with J.J. McCarthy. And the Wolves at least had options. The Vikings they boxed themselves into a corner where they didn't really have a choice.
That's right. It's a great point, Dan, because Chris Finch, in many ways, was validated, especially last year, by putting Rob Dillingham on ice, because
that's true.
They made it to the conference finals. I mean, they are 32-20 right now. I know they've been a little up and down, but they're one game out of the 3 seed, and so they are winning games here with the way that Finch has done it. I do think that there is room for a discussion about, could he be better at giving the Dillinghams, the Leonard Millers of the world, at least some run now and again on a second night of a back-to-back, on, a game like in Memphis the other night where they were clearly dead-legged and couldn't move around. Would you throw Dillingham out there? And I think that sometimes he's slow to adapt that way.
I agree.
But to your point, they are in this to win this right now. Like, there's not a lot of messing around to be done. And, this is a new day. Now you do have possibilities of Giannis Antetokounmpo wanting to come to play with Anthony Edwards, and the Timberwolves trying to get to a point where they're making the finals. That's what they're looking at. And this is an entirely different atmosphere than what we have known of this organization for most of its life.
Is anybody else coming? We have open roster spots still, don't we? What do we got? Is Conley
so they have 2
definitely coming back, Mike?
Yep. They have two open roster spots. I expect Mike Conley to take one of them. They could technically leave the other one open, but I do think that there are going to be some names on the buyout market that are going to be of interest. Cam Thomas got waived today. I'm looking at guys like DeMar DeRozan. You're looking at guys, a bunch of other veterans that are going to hit the buyout market and may be worth considering. I do think the Wolves will consider adding another piece on the buyout market, not guaranteed, but yes, I would expect one of those pieces coming, one of those empty seats to be Mike Conley's, and we'll see what kind of role he has when he returns, because I think a lot of those minutes that he was getting have to go to Ayo Dosunmu right now.
Last item, you were in Toronto for the Wolves comeback. I want to make one quick Anthony Edwards point, and we can maybe expand on it when we have more time next time we have Jan. What struck me last night that is encouraging in a huge way about Anthony down the stretch wasn't simply that he scored as effectively as he did, but the variety of ways in which he scored. I feel like last year he could get going, but it would be that same wing shot, just sort of backing up and hitting it and just getting hot, where we saw fadeaways, we saw turnarounds, we saw drives to the basket. To me, if you talk about where he's gotten better and where he could become absolutely a top 5 player if he's not there yet, it's that variety that he's now showing to his offensive game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%, Dan. 2 quick thoughts on it. First of all, we talked to Anthony Edwards about that after the game, and one thing he did say was one big focus for him this summer was to get to a point where he could get to his spot.
Yep.
And he knows that if I get to that spot, I'm comfortable and I'm going to knock down that shot. And right now that spot looks to be the elbow. He got there a couple of times, one for a pull-up jumper, one for a turnaround jumper. But you're right. Then he goes to the basket. So many times last season, especially, was so frustrating. It was dribble, 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 step back three.
Exactly.
And that was very predictable. And now he is unpredictable. And that you can see in the eyes of the defender a helplessness. They don't know what to do with him now because he's going to throw anything that he has at them. And he's more athletic than them. And he can get to those spots and he can elevate and get clean looks. And he makes them all, Dan. It's 64% field goal percentage in the clutch right now. That's miles ahead of everyone else. But finally on this, the reason that it was important for the Wolves to look at Giannis Antetokounmpo and then for the Wolves to get Ayo Dosunmu is because Anthony Edwards is here and he's ready to win now.
Yeah.
And he's entering the MVP conversation. And when you have a player like that, it is incumbent upon you to put the best team around him that they can, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to go for it right now. They're not waiting until he's 26 or 27. They see what the leaps that he's made, and it's pretty exciting to watch.
Appreciate the extra time, my friend. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it. That is Bonus Johnny Athletic, brought to you by RBC Wealth Management. We always appreciate their fine support, and I know he does too. And we thank Johnny for the extra time. How about college basketball? Yeah, it's okay to talk about it. A terrific win the last night for the Golden Gopher men's basketball team. They held on, man. It was very nerve-wracking down the stretch. The man who was there coaching, Nico Medved, University of Minnesota, is going to join us next. Stay tuned.